episode 7. I'm your co-host, Dante Bullhauer.
And Jamie Bullhauer.
And we are creative people. I'm a photographer, he's a writer, and this is a podcast where we talk all things creativity, how it relates to our lives, and basically just anything under the umbrella of creativity. We're on episode 7 today, trying out something new because I didn't pick up cold bubblers, so...
Yes, and we have something new for you at the end of the video,
So that's our excuse for changing things up, but it is my fault. So, oh man, that puts the bubble and bubbler is on full display. Okay, so let's get into it. Today we're talking traveling and how that relates to creativity. Traveling for a lot of people is something, that you can do just to get away from regular life, kind of switch things up, just kind of relax. But it can also be kind of a catalyst for your creative brain. It can kind of spark some new things. We kind of mentioned it in some earlier episodes, talking about new environments, things like that. But traveling and getting outside of the place that you're normally in can be a real catalyst for some creativity. So I'll let you go ahead and take it away. You just returned from Wisconsin.
Yeah. So as a part of keeping, our podcast organic to a degree, we went on a college visit for your sister, and she's looking at film schools and stuff like that. So we were in Wisconsin, and we decided to bring the rest of the girls and just kind of have a small family vacation. And dealing with that, and because of the vacation, and even though you had talked about when we got back, you're heading off to in a little while, and you've gone to Colorado, to take pictures, and the idea of like, how does travel, or what are some of the benefits that traveling can have for creativity? Now, he actually wrote his persuasive essay on why we should...
This is a master class on my senior literature papers here. We've talked about 2 of them so far, and I thought those would never see the light of day again.
About the benefits of traveling, and it was just the benefits of traveling, not specific to creativity. And it just on the drive home, it's just like, man, travel really sparked some interesting stories, and one of the stories I've actually got word count down. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And it was like, all right, why and how can you make traveling actually be something that sparks and that you're ready to handle any muse or creative ideas that come to play? Now, you have traveled simply to actually take photos. You've actually planned that. And there's our lovely train. So really, this is really
sponsored
organic.
Sponsored by Amtrak.
Yes. Why? And you're going to kind of do that again. What does that do for you? Why do you have this drive to actually travel, to actually kind of be creative?
So there's different parts to it. The first part is seeing something new, and obviously living in Nebraska, there's corn and stuff. Sometimes there's beans, but like other than that, there's just not much variety in terms of landscapes, and landscapes is one of my favorite things to photograph. And so,
side note, Stephen King has used cornfields a lot in different
he
stories.
has a whole book about it.
So I'm just saying, don't.
I'm not hating on it. I'm just saysaying the variety is.
When you live here, he's from Maine, so this was brand new territory.
Yeah, corn is like an ocean. Yeah. But I love landscape photography. I love taking photos of mountains, and I've never actually been to a beach, but I just love the variety that our planet obviously has to offer. And so when I go on trips, mostly with the intent, I just love hiking, but mostly with the intent to create and kind of spark that creative muse in me. Back in October, I went just on a day trip to Colorado, which wasn't supposed to be, but long story short, it was a day trip to Colorado, and I did that specifically because I was feeling a little burnt out. I was feeling like I wasn't getting the most out of my creativity as I thought that I should be. And so I went out there. I ended up hiking like 4 miles in a span of like a couple hours. And I was just so infused with like this adrenaline to be somewhere that I haven't been before, and just for the purpose of creating. And when you're in somewhere that you've never been before, you're in a realm where you've really never touched the surface of those like creative spots. It's just like the whole space that you're in is kind of your canvas to work with. And so instead of trying to kind of, oh, I live downtown, so how can I make downtown look different than what it already is? Instead, I just have this whole blank slate where I feel like I haven't created anything here before. Let's see what I can get the most out of with these different spots. And so the biggest thing it does for me is it exposes something new to me that I haven't been around before. And to me, that's just creative in itself. It's kind of like I do a lot of graphic design too, and creating something that's not even close to something I've created before just feels refreshing and replenishing, because it's something that I've never really dealt with, I've never experienced, I've never seen. And so just the kind of hitting the refresh button is really kind of what that does for me creatively, and it helps just kind of relight that fire of, okay, yeah, I am creative. Like, I can do this. This looks cool. It kind of just replenishes that creativity.
Yeah, that was actually two of the benefits that if you get the chance to travel, and whether it's a day trip or, a kind of dad life travel here. One was that you do see a totally new environment, new ideas, new people, both good or bad, just... Okay, and in our case, because I'm going to talk a little about one of the stories I got started. And in doing that, though, or even choosing to travel, and if you ever traveled, you got a schedule and stuff, but you get amped. Like, you're going somewhere. You're kind of heightened a little bit and excited to see this. And like in my case, I like to try the new coffee shops, the local ones, and you're just like, you're juiced a little bit. Now, it can still be stressful, dad with 6 children and being organized and everything like that. We had our schedule. But yeah, that opportunity to see something totally new. But I think you also have to be ready with that. If you travel and you're just like, I got to get through this checklist, we got to do this, and your mindset is narrowed, and you're not kind of open to just kind of people watching a little bit or stuff like that, you're going to miss some things that you should see, especially in the creative realm. And in your case, you got camera equipment. So going on a hike for hiking is different than going on a hike and going to be creative, going to have my camera with me. I'm going to, try to get the shots, and the other benefit of traveling for the creative part is, I think, with the new environment, and you touched upon, I'm kind of coming from the writing side a little bit. It gives you different stories. If you're people watching, because we went to a water park and an amusement park, and I had a chance just to watch people, and you're like, what's that story? And then meeting people, like I went to a couple of local coffee shops and kind of talked to people, in that area of Wisconsin. Best latte that everybody had was this honey-based latte, and every place had it. And I'm like, honey in Wisconsin? Like, why? And I never really got to the story of that. And that's a little bit on me. I should have dug a little bit deeper, but it's just an interesting phenomenon that this type of latte is a popular thing. There's a story there, something to research or,
to unpack.
Yeah. On that note of being open, okay, so a little bit of story time here. So it was a snippet of the idea, was my very short story about 2 days ago. The word was screw. And so that very short story is set in a hotel. And there's something bad happening. Now, I'm not going to tell much more about the story because I want to get it written. But that was spurred because of a bad situation. And part of being open for the creative thing is I think you need to be open for both the good and the negative. So we stayed at Mount Olympus in the Wisconsin Dells. And, it's a little bit of an older hotel. And so the sound was just, you heard everything. And we're laying there. And, we were trying to get to sleep because we're getting ready to go the next day, do some cool things. And so we had lights out about close to 10, but that's not every family's routine. So we're laying there, and all of a sudden, we hear this baby cry, like just cry. And both your mom and I are parental that like we understood this cry was a stress cry. This was not a hunger. Like we were like, oh my gosh. And then we hear the pounding above this, and we hear somebody in the shower, and it's just kind of bad. And I kind of latched on to this idea, and I'm all like, okay, what if you're in the hotel room and the world outside of you is falling apart, but you don't really know why it's falling apart because you're stuck in this hotel room? Well, then it gets even more intense. About 20 minutes later, all of a sudden here, this is security, like there's security guards or stuff going on. Then there's more, oh my gosh, just loud banging in a door, and like, oh my gosh, what? And I didn't want to stick my head out. You don't want to do that. I'm just like, this is crazy. What is going on? What is going on? So I've got my short story started. My word count came at the water park because I used my phone, and I'm sitting here talking into my phone, and I'm sure people are passing me, and I'm all like, they're screaming, they're wondering, what am I talking about? But I was sitting there, and it was kind of annoying, yes, having to deal with all the noise. But this story just started, and as a dad, what would I do if my family is here and something bad is going outside of the hotel room? But how do you handle it? What goes on? What do you so that short story will be coming. I'm not sure how I'll share it or anything, but it's that case of just using, in this case, a negative thing. But yet, man, it really, and I, got it down, via Google Docs. But as we talked about before, you've got to do it. I can't just let that story sit. I got to get it out so I can work with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I was just about to say the same thing about stories and just being exposed to not only your own personal stories, but the stories of other people in these different environments. And to some degree, you could have experienced that if you went to Lincoln and the same thing happened. But there are so many different opportunities to be in so many different situations when you do travel outside of wherever it is that you are. And so just having a story from the Colorado trip that I took was, and I didn't get a photo of it because it was kind of a personal moment that I didn't want to intrude upon, but there was a lady that had, I don't know what you call it, like a canister of ashes. I don't know if there's a specific name for it. An urn, yep.
An urn.
So she had an urn, and I was at a lake in Colorado, and it was a super popular lake, and she just had this urn with what looked like her daughter, but irrelevant. And she just poured it into the lake, and then she started crying. And like, I didn't want to take a photo of it. It would have been a sweet photo and whatnot, but it was kind of a moment I didn't want to mess with. But so stories like that, where like for the next 20 minutes I was thinking, what significance did this lake have to whoever that person was, his life? Like, what happened here? Did they propose here? What happened here that caused her to want to dump the ashes of this person into this specific lake? And so there's so many stories that you just can stumble upon that happen to you by traveling that you normally probably wouldn't experience if you just kind of stayed in your own, area code type thing.
Yeah. And when you travel, and we talked about being amped, the story I'm working on is they've traveled. The protagonist is the dad. It's you're away from home, you're in that stress that you have just normal, and then all of a sudden everything falls apart around you, and then sometimes within, like, our family, we're pretty scheduled even when we take vacation, but you got to be open to follow and sometimes do spontaneous things. I have another story just started because we actually stopped at a scenic lookout. We're a little early. We're just like, okay. And we're like, okay, let's just do this. And we followed this trail, and it took us down into the woods a little bit. And there was this cool little, like, outlook place, but it was all stone. And there's a kind of a cool stone in the middle. And the view was nothing but trees, like right in front of your face. Like you could not see the valley or anything, and it was all over your head. It was kind of dark, and I'm all like, man, if somebody wanted to get some victims or a monster or like, this would be the way to get them. Like, then we decided to venture the other way, and we came across a highway overpass and talk about stories that it was gated or fenced over, and there was one of those places where lots of people were putting their locks with their names and their love and stuff like that, and so it was kind of cool. Found another cool thing, but we were just like on the spur of the moment, just went and it was like, let's do this, let's see what these scenic lookouts are, and it's probably going to be another kind of horror story type of thing, because that's what it ended up being like. So yeah, I think traveling is a great way in your case for like sparking, especially if you're down, you got the chance, even a day trip, get you re-energized. Just your normal traveling, like I honestly have quite a few poems and stuff based off, you remember when I was working for CCC and stuff, that I traveled to from the airports and stuff like that, and just being open, like, yes, I'm doing this for travel, but my muse, I'm ready. If you hit me, I'm going to do that. I'm going to write this down, and we're going to produce something from it.
And that's part of, like, one of the biggest benefits of traveling is the stories almost just come to you instead of you're just sitting there late at night and you're like, okay, maybe you haven't left the house in a couple days, whatever, and you're trying so hard to branch that creativity out when you haven't really had a catalyst or something to really spark that. And so when you go travel, new experiences, new places, new people to watch, new everything, the stories basically walk right up to you and present themselves to you like, okay, yeah, you were just sitting in a hotel room and this whole thing happened. Like, you didn't go out of your way to try and work for that story. You'll craft it later, but the idea and the spark that you needed just sort of kind of came to you. And same with, going up to the mountains. I went up there to get cool fall photos of the aspen trees, whatever. It started snowing, and that ended up creating the whole different type of editing style for those photos that I wasn't even intending on editing. And so those ideas, those shoots, those photos kind of came to me instead of, me having to try and work. How can I take a different picture of this downtown alley because I've taken it like 400 times already? And so that's another big benefit that I think is good for traveling for creatives.
Yeah. And I was thinking of actually also the moose picture.
Yep.
That we were driving
out of the park and we just saw it, and I just took off running. Like, everybody was just staying on the road, and I'm like, nope, I'm going to get it. And I ran way too close to it. But yeah, we were just driving out of the park. We were leaving and we saw the moose, and I'm like, stop the car. We're getting out. We're going to photograph this.
And that's being open to the moment.
Yep. We could have easily kept driving and been like, oh, shoot, we missed it. Yeah. But yeah, so traveling, huge benefits, not only just, personally, whatever, but creatively, to kind of re-spark that adrenaline, do a whole bunch of things for you. That's traveling exemplifies all the benefits of creativity.
Yeah.
Now, if you can't travel, if, whatever, work, whatever, there are different ways to spark your creativity. One of them is challenges. And so we've talked over the past couple days about, do we do some challenges? What kind of challenges do we want to do? And so we're going to start TMC challenges. It'll be hashtag TMC, TMCC, something related to that. We'll put it in the description of the video on the podcast.
And he'll probably put a graphic underneath.
Yeah.
And then we'll check the socials for him.
And so for this first challenge, we wanted to do, however you express your creativity, we wanted to do an emotion. And so do you have an emotion in mind that you want to do, or do we just want to spit one off?
Well, did you want to do, so we do positive, or we could kind of do a negative. And sometimes some people think that more sorrowful things like that are easier. I don't know. So the idea is we'll touch
on the idea while we think of the emotion.
Yeah. So if you are a poet, short story writer, photographer, artist, welder,
musician,
doesn't matter. But the idea is we're going to give you an emotion here in a second, and in the work, the reader, viewer, listener should feel that emotion, but nowhere in the composition, whatever it is, can that word appear.
Or like, kind of, if you were to frame this as a photographer, you don't just take a picture of the word love.
Yeah, or like a heart.
Yeah,
like,
nothing super cliche that, is your basic understanding of love, sadness. Like, a person smiling does not really... It's happiness, but it doesn't really stretch your creativity. Yeah. So kind of drawing out the emotion from the scene, whether you're painting it, you're photographing it, you're writing it, whatever, in not necessarily a subtle way, but something that stretches your creativity and kind of helps you, think a little bit more outside of the box as to what this emotion can be conveyed as, is kind of the goal of this challenge.
Yeah. So do you want positive or negative?
Let's go negative.
We'll go negative.
I've been taking a lot of senior photos. It's all smiles, all happiness, weddings, whatever.
So then how about sorrow?
Okay.
We'll do sorrow.
Sorrow is your emotion for our first challenge, our first emotional challenge. However you express creativity, try and showcase it within, those bounds without it being super cliche or obvious. And we'll be looking out for the hashtags. We'll do it ourselves.
Yep.
And we'll come back in 2 weeks in the next episode and show you guys what we came up with. We'll maybe find some examples to showcase and do that whole thing.
Yeah. So that's our creative new thing that we're doing.
Yes.
Is every once in a while we'll throw out a creative challenge for you guys, and then highlight some of those, so if you got creative friends and they're not connected into our podcast yet, share this with them. They can still do the challenge even, without watching the podcast. That'd be sad though. Watch the podcast.
Podcast.
Excited to see what you guys come up with. And get out and try to travel also.
It's good for you.
It is good for you.
Ways.
Yeah.
With that, this was The Creative Moment, episode 7, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.